All right, everybody, welcome to the Huffman Basketball Podcast. That's what we're talking about today is basketball. I almost forgot what sport we were talking about. We got John Evans, our HB Elite local, not so local sports PhD sports psychologist on hand. We're trying to do these once a month with John just because he's on the well, first of all, you have a PhD in sports psychology. Let's just say that you went to school. You were in school by the time I retired from pro basketball. You started working outside your PhD, which I think is crazy. You were like, I'm going to go to school forever.
It felt like forever, that's for sure.
But we first of all want to thank our sponsors. Whether you're looking for sports psych, screen printing, roofing, accounting, photography, sports medicine, irrigation, chiropractic care, jewelry, wine, beer, and spirits, make sure you check out our show notes. We'll have all the links in there from our local marketing sponsors for HB Elite. We thank you guys for always supporting us and helping us get gym time and helping us pay the rent in exchange for getting your business out to the basketball world in Northern Michigan, which we're excited to help grow. So, John, we've talked a little bit about, what's going on in sports, today. What are you seeing right now as some hot topics for parents, for athletes to improve their performance? I personally want to get into, what we were just talking about, that self acceptance zone, where as an athlete, I think even as an adult, we're always kind of looking around to see, am I accepting who I am? Am I okay with being different? Am I, valuing my strengths and not destroying myself over my weaknesses or shortcomings or mess ups? I think this happens in every walk of life, whether you're an adult or a kid. But how do we start to work with kids to develop that zone where they're not a victim and they're not hating themselves for bad performance?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Trevor. First of all, I will not be talking specifically about basketball. You know, as Trevor can attest, my basketball career ended in about sixth grade, and that was about that. But in terms of working with athletes, performers of all kinds, um, all walks of life, I think we could all benefit from kind of a terminology and the concept of distress tolerance. And I think something, and we'll get into a little bit what that is in a little bit. But I think as parents, first and foremost, one of the things that we need to make sure that we are all doing, and I think a lot of us struggle with this, is allowing for for measured levels of discomfort in our kids' lives, even outside of sport. I'll give you a quick anecdote from literally this morning. Is my 7-year-old son has a pair of Timberland boots, but they don't lace up yet. They've got a zipper that zips up the side, and it's difficult. It's difficult to zip up. It says it pinches his fingers. It hurts his fingers. Like, Dad, can you help me zip this up? No, Jack, I think you can do it. Like, if you work at it, I know it might be a little uncomfortable, but you got this. So, and I think I actually talked about this last time we talked, is like challenge with support. Challenge with support.
Oh,
Okay, that was at the end. Good. I think as long as we have a process for challenge and support, we in little ways, in and outside of their sport, have to challenge our kids, ourselves, to endure discomfort. This book that I'm reading right now, The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, he talks about our civilization as a whole, our comfort zone is getting smaller. Whether it's the ability to have a little space heater next to me, or order something from
I
Amazon,
have a space heater next to
or
me right now. That's crazy. My
see,
feet are cold.
exactly.
You pop this thing
But
on.
like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, like these comforts didn't exist. Anxieties, when our ancestors, or even a couple of 100 years ago, experienced anxiety, it was probably because they needed to be able to go out and hunt something so that their family could eat that day and that week and not literally starve. So anxiety had much more survival functional role that could lead to death. Whereas now anxiety is like, man, I hope my boss doesn't hate this PowerPoint that I made. I'm really anxious about it. Or if I miss this free throw, or if my parent, if I don't score 20 points, our comfort zones in general have just shrunk, and which then by mathematically or virtually makes it harder to get way outside our comfort zones. So,
What can I
one of the
stop you
things
for a
is just,
second? Can I ask
yeah,
a
yeah.
question? If
Hmm.
we're on Maslow's hierarchy of needs and you're on that bottom rung of like survival, food, shelter, and you start moving up that kind of pyramid to self-realization, or I can't remember what the top,
Actualization.
self-actualization, or let's say you find your most purposeful life. Anxiety goes all along that triangle. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or still surviving. We still are hardwired to be anxious because that's what, when we were cavemen, we were like, oh wait, I got to watch out for that lion. So regardless of where you're at on that triangle, you know is anxiety, it's just kind of part of human suffering no matter what. I mean, is everybody
Sure.
like going through this anxiety, whether they're like I have a lot, I feel very privileged, but I also feel like I still suffer from anxiety, you know
Yeah. I mean,
and I
we at all those levels, right? The physiological needs, safety needs, the love and belonging, self-esteem, up to self-actualization. There's different types of anxiety that naturally belong and are inevitable in all of those steps. I think what we have to normalize there is that if I care about something, I'm going to feel a certain way about it. Let's just even stick with anxiety.
mhm,
Like before a soccer game, what I want to happen, win the soccer game, and what I got, the uncertainty of how that soccer game is going to go, there's a gap. There's a gap of unknown of how much of what
right.
I want, what I've got. And the bigger the gap that exists, the more I'm going to feel that feeling. So, especially if it's like, the example I use with a lot of my athletes is, if I get a red light and I'm on my way to the grocery store, there's a sidewalk crack sized gap between what I want and what I've got. I stopped at the red light, but I want to be at the grocery store. That's tiny annoyance and frustration. I can manage that pretty easily. If I've got my son Jack in the back seat and he's just broken his leg, and I'm at the same red light, now the gap between what I want, get to the hospital to help my kid, and what I've got stuck at this red light is the Grand Canyon.
Mm.
And so I have to normalize that the more it matters to me, the more I care about things, I'm going to feel exponentially, based on that level of, of care.
So that's why when I was a kid, I had to go like lay down before every game because I felt like I was going to puke because I wanted to win so bad, or I wanted to perform well, and I wanted to make varsity as a freshman. I had all these big goals. So that gap, I was trying to do things to quell my anxiety, whether it was like listening to classical music or visualizing the game, or doing some of these mental weightlifting, as you've called it, to bring my attention back to you know what, breathing or slowing down or just controlling what I can control. Is that what you
Well,
do
and
in
that
that
brings us
gap?
all the way back to what we're talking about, distress tolerance. Like we can train distress tolerance from a psychological standpoint, but also from a physiological standpoint.
Yeah.
Like there's a great theory called polyvagal theory that, for to oversimplify,
I don't see a
like we have
contact.
Whoa.
Siri started paying attention to what I was saying.
She's like, polyvagal what?
Either way, so there's ways of training vagal tone. The higher your vagal tone, the longer it takes for that 911 call to go out for the fight for that sympathetic spike. So
Mhm.
for you, the ability to kind of train some of these things from a physiological standpoint so that your body wasn't over releasing adrenaline and cortisol too early before the game. The psychological skills of reducing rumination, reducing perfectionism, the need to focus on outcomes that are outside of your control, like winning a basketball game, all are ways of increasing distress tolerance. But I think where the other side of the harsh parent or the harsh self that we need to be watchful of is where we've demonized, or somehow like criticism and self-criticism have become bad, or bad words, or to be avoided.
Mm.
um, and I think that's Incorrect. I think that we need to embrace self-criticism, but only if we can frame that self-criticism as only in that performance moment, for that game, that practice, that free throw, whatever it is. But what ends up happening is what happens when you miss a couple free throws in a row. The thoughts start like, I'm a bad free throw shooter.
No, I say I'm
Uh-oh.
better than this. I'm better than this.
Well,
That's what I
you
used
do.
to. That's what I used to say to myself. I'm better than this. I
Hmm.
make 9 out of 10 all the time.
Hmm.
What is that, self criticism, or is that
It
what is
is. I
that?
mean, self-judgment, but I think it can be. This is where the type of performance psychology that I practice is not that statement in and of itself can neither be described as positive or negative. It's either just, is that going to help you make your next free throw, or is it not going to help you make your next free
I would
throw? If it
usually
is, great.
smile. I would also smile because I know I was better. I'm like, it's like, oh, I missed again. I'm gonna, like it's almost like I was in
A
disbelief.
challenge.
It's a
Hmm.
challenge. Like,
Hmm.
no way. This is, like I got this is. I saw Steph Curry do that. Like purposely changing your, smiling or being like almost like in not disbelief, but like how good you can do, and sometimes you get in a funk, like, but like
Well, I don't know if
powering
you
and
remember.
doing this is like having terrible body language. That's not going to help. You got to relax. You got to
Mhm.
loosen it up and be in the flow and smile and embrace that challenge of like thousands of people are watching me. I'm going to make this next one. Watch this.
Yeah, but that's not perceived very well sometimes. I don't know if you recall this, but in this last year's Women's World Cup, after Megan Rapinoe missed her PK,
Mm,
she had this big smile on her face. Um, and it was like, I cannot believe that just happened. Like, this is like
yeah.
the bookend end of my career, and I
The,
literally just missed a PK
yeah. The problem
that's
with the
likely
PK
to.
is she doesn't get to do it again. She has to
Yeah,
go
but if
sit
her
out.
team, well, she does, but if her, like, there, that didn't necessarily mean that was the end of the tournament for them. Like,
Yeah.
she could have, if they had made it through those PKs, she
Mm,
could have used that to kind of boost her into the next level of the tournament, but she got roasted for it.
yeah.
Um, so
That's interesting.
how we use body language and how we use even facial expression is definitely important in
Yeah.
how we internalize criticism or use that criticism as a challenge to push us to perform at a higher level. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. I
too
would usually,
often the tendency is to take that criticism and either beat ourselves up and make it a part of our identity, or externalize it, and it's like it's somebody else's fault. It's the referee, it's my coach, something else. I'm not feeling well today, and I'm the victim.
yeah.
Um, and we have to find a way to stay in this kind of healthy range where I can incorporate self-criticism into growth, and I can keep it very, very specifically focused. I mean, again, just my kid just joined. Jack just joined an actual club soccer team a couple weeks ago, and this Tuesday at practice, I'm okay saying like he did not have a great practice. I mean, he's 7, but and he's number one is he's supposed to have fun and just go out there and just experience it. But I talked to him about like, look, there's some looked like you didn't really want to be out there sometimes, and didn't really like go toward the ball or trust yourself to dribble or make a good pass. And at the end, I was like, well, how did? And so we got home, and I said, Jack, how do you feel? And he said, I feel like you're disappointed in me. And I said, okay, this is important, Jack. Never, I am not disappointed in you. I am disappointed in how like this practice went, but that's okay. You're gonna have bad practices. I am very proud of you. You are stepping outside your comfort zone. You're putting in the work. You wanted to play on this team. Like these are really good soccer players. You've only been playing here for a couple weeks. I am proud of you. The disappointment is not in you. But I can tell you like this practice wasn't great. And so okay. So it's a situation where I will always, and he knows this, I will tell him, like, look, this particular practice or that particular drill, I think we can work on, can be better. But it's not you. I'm not just ever disappointed in you as a human, as my son. Like, there's so much more to you than just as a soccer player. I'm so proud of how you are reading and making friends and being kind and generous and appreciative. So it just you have to be really cognizant and specific about, look, where is the criticism? It's about one particular aspect, like one particular performance or moment. And then criticism can be really useful and effective if we can problem solve with it. And here's where the self compassion comes in, because problem solving in our brain, the brain science 101, happens out here in what we call the prefrontal cortex. All of our executive functioning, critical thinking, goal setting, decision making, rationality, like that's all out here. And it was the last part of the brain to develop. Jack or any athlete is feeling defensive, and that layer of the brain is going to devolve down into the limbic brain, which is just the amygdala, fear center, fight or flight, that autonomic response. And then they're not here, like that kind of complex feedback. They're not processing that. There's no ability to problem solve through that criticism if their brain is in survival mode. Like if I was fending off a bear and you were trying to teach me basic arithmetic, that's not like, I'm not learning. Like I'm not hearing that,
Yeah.
because the brain, that's the way the brain is designed for good reason. I don't want a lot of critical thinking when I'm running away from a bear or trying to navigate traffic or, some dangerous driving situation. I don't need it. I need it. I need responses, and I need reactions, and I need safety. So at any rate, we have to be really cognizant about how we are delivering criticism, and then as for ourselves, how we are internalizing criticism. We can use that criticism to grow, and self-compassion and being able to demonstrate that self-compassion is a big part of that.
Interesting. Because I feel, with HB Elite, I I've always wanted to develop Northern Michigan basketball players, ever since I was in college and got a chance to play pros and got to work with D2 and my younger brother and other Petoskey kids growing up. It was always fun, to see kids develop. And then, you always had, I always had the conversations with kids that were uncomfortable, like the honest conversation that you have to say, kind of like you had with Jack about, hey, today wasn't great, or the practice wasn't great, or your effort you know wasn't high enough, it was, what's going on. Like I always, and I think when you, as a parent, it's tough because you're also there trying to support and love and unconditionally, you just want your kid to be happy and healthy and growing and learning. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what sports can help with. They can help you learn how to be a great teammate. They can teach you how to fight through adversity, how to earn your playing time and earn success, all those great life lessons that sports teaches you. But, there's also that area where you're just like, your effort isn't high enough. Your effort isn't good enough right now. We need to improve, as a coach, I don't have kids. So I'm always like trying to find the right tone and right message, and sometimes you can tell you put a kid into that fight or flight by yelling at them, or, by, they start, I made my younger brother, tear up a few times when he was a little kid, and I regret it. But I think also that some of those messages are hard to hear when you really want something. If your kid wants to be play at a high level or play in college, there also has to be like an honest conversation about what are you working hard enough? Is your process, are you doing what other Division I athletes are doing, or are you consistent? I know I challenged an HB Elite player. He said he wanted to play Division I basketball. I said, well, tell me about your process now. Well, I practice like almost every day, he said. And I said, well, the best players in the state, the Mr. Basketballs, these kids that are really trying to get to the college level, they don't, they're getting up in the morning. They have a very pretty robust protocol of like ball handling, dribbling, shooting in the morning, or, at lunchtime, they have their ball with them. They're gym rats, like
Mm-hmm.
you can't, especially if you're not 7 foot tall, or you don't have this super high talent, high ceiling for athleticism and height and, wingspan, all those other things that help basketball players. So like, how are you going to be okay with being different? That's kind of what I
Mhm.
challenge the kid. Because if you're not willing to accept that you're going to have to be different than the other kids a little bit, just in terms of what you're doing, not of who you are or how much fun you have, or if you play video games, you're just going to have to prioritize, parts of this process. And you're going to have to learn that self-discipline to get there, and I get texts from the kid now, he's 48 days straight, which is awesome. I'm so proud of you. I know I tell him I'm so proud of your effort. So I always try
Mhm.
to bring it back to that consistency and effort, and those are the kind of the things that will level you up as a player in terms of, one, it's more fun to play hard, I think. It's more fun to be totally engaged at practice and competing all out. But, I think, like you said, that sometimes you're in that, you have bad days, you have that fight or flight response where you don't even know what's happening in a game. You're just like freaking out. You can't
Mhm.
even focus. So anyway,
Well, the effort piece, I think I want to go to the effort piece. The thing that I think that the biggest rule of thumb for parents is like, you better be criticizing something that that kid can control virtually 100%.
yeah.
Like a real red flag is if you are criticizing score turnovers
Why
or
don't you score
points,
30 points? Yeah. Like,
rebounds. Like if they're not, putting them in position, like themselves in positions to get rebounds, or their level of like willingness to kind of get in the mix, that's more of those, and that gets me to effort, right? So effort, everybody, I think a lot of people are good at saying, yeah, I want to focus on effort. I think the next level there is operationalizing and defining, what does that mean? Like give me the actual behaviors that mean effort. So for basketball, maybe that's like diving for loose balls and sprinting up and down, sprinting back on defense when your team just missed like a jump shot. Uh, Getting in position and getting your body willingness into getting in position to make a rebound. Whatever those elements of, like, we have to be more specific. It can't just be your effort sucked. Right? It has to be, here are the actual things that you control that make effort and hustle and added, and like all the things that you control. Let me break down. You didn't have a good attitude. Okay, well, I control that, but what does that mean? Well,
yeah.
you yelled at a teammate. You slumped, like you, even Jack, like his team got scored on. He pounded his fist on the top of the goal, and I was like, okay, well, that's fine. I'm great with you being frustrated about being scored on. Um, Maybe consider what that looks like, as if you're hitting a goal or kicking the wall, or what does that attitude of behavior actually look like that we can kind of problem solve around or improve.
Yeah.
But I think we just have to be more specific with that. But to your point of like, it's just more fun to play well and play hard and be there. I mean, that's where you have to get into training the mindfulness piece. Like people are like, oh, mindfulness means relaxation. No, it doesn't mean relaxation. It means being present non-judgmentally, meaning, can I just be there? I'm going to develop skills faster by being present. I'm going to enjoy myself and have a more vivid experience by being present. I'm going to perform at a higher level by being present, period. And, that's something that definitely has to be trained, because the brain does not like to be in the present, and it does not like to be non judgmental. The brain loves to be in the past. The brain loves to be in the future, predicting futures, or, remembering the past, or memories or mistakes. The brain
Hmm.
loves judging, but that is not an appropriate mindset or space for the brain during performance. And I think that's again another aspect that um, deserves training.
I was listening to a video the other day talking about competitiveness and playing hard, or high effort, and there's it was interesting because I was thinking about, what really drove me when I was a kid. What got me playing really hard? Was it, was it something that, because I think sometimes you can use like an external thing, like I want to beat my older brother, and that will turn me into a mindful athlete, because everything I'm doing, every focus, every fiber of my being is I'm trying to win this one-on-one game or this drill or beat.
Well, that's an ego. That's called in goal orientation. That's called ego oriented,
Yeah.
which is
So
good. You need some of that.
yeah, I was very ego oriented as a young lad, like but that competitiveness, I think, happened in our family too, around everything, soccer, board games, swimming, go playing tag, we used to play sharks and minnows on land, we'd run back
Mm-hmm.
and forth. Like, I used to never want to get tagged, like I was always driven to try to win all these games as kids. And I think that's, building that competitiveness. How do we help kids tap into competitiveness, but also in a healthy way where they don't lose control, or, like you're saying, punch a kid because they lost. Like, there's that fine line of competitiveness turning you into a mindful athlete, and you're completely focused and energized because at the end of the day, like the last thing you want to do is lose. You're fighting to not lose, which is weird because I don't remember my wins as much as I remember my losses as an athlete. And I don't know if that's, true for other athletes. Maybe I was just a fear-based.
No, I think the human brain has a negativity bias, so it's always going to be geared toward, the hypothetical example is like if you're walking down a street and on this side of the street there's two people like holding hands or kissing or like showing, like being romantic with each other, and on this side of the street there's a fight. All 100 people's eyes are going to be on the fight.
Yeah.
Like we want to see there's a negativity bias to the brain, and that evolutionarily makes sense. Like we wanted the brain to scare us. We wanted to be fear-based because those are the ancestors of ours that lived. Like, don't walk off the cliff, don't eat that berry, don't go into that cave. Like those.
You basically just summarized our complete corporate news and media.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody look at the bad news every day.
Yeah,
because that's what your brain wants to look at or will look at first. That's crazy.
But I think that ego orientation is not, again, it's not a bad thing, but it has to be balanced with the stuff that we've talked about earlier in this podcast, which is the mastery orientation, the process, the improvement. Like that has to be kind of central to this process as well.
This is Maria. She's meowing at us. She's like, her.
Oh, this Zoom has a nice audio background noise suppressor because I didn't hear that at all.
Oh, you didn't hear her meowing at me? Feed me my friskies.
So I think that we have, but back to that parenting thing for a second. Like, you have to have the support. They have to know that you support them.
Yeah.
Then when you give the feedback, the brain isn't as likely to go into that central, that devolved layer, right? It's more likely to be able to stay in that receive mode because there's an inherent understanding of love, support, and trust.
Yeah. I mean, you just said the L word is huge. I think love, like you can't stop loving, like Jack felt like you were disappointed in him. And maybe that was like, you don't love me, like there's definitely parents out there that scream and yell and want their kids to perform. And now the kids don't understand, do you not love me because of how I'm playing? And that's a terrible road to go down. Like I think it can get really blurry for a kid about, where does your parent, do they love me, or is it conditional? Is it unconditional? And so I think the one thing I did a good job of as a older brother was just having that love. And like, I would write letters to my younger brother about how proud of him I was of everything in his life. And that I challenge you to make a better process, something you can control. What can you control? You can control, taking your ball to school, shooting at lunchtime instead of, gossiping with your friends about, who's dating who or what, like that stuff's always going to be there, but the time that you miss and building those habits and being a little uncomfortable, like we were talking about the comfort crisis, we all want to be comfortable. My feet are so toasty warm right now with this little heater, but I also have a cold plunge that I love to go into
Hmm.
and just like force myself to do things that make me uncomfortable. And I think like it's funny because I think athletes, college athletes, people that have gone onto that collegiate level, it's like you can't have the good without the bad, the hard suffering. You know, like the championship is only worth being a championship because of all the hard work and BS and suffering and uncomfortable morning workouts. Like the championship would never mean half as much if you didn't have that that the comfort taken away from you at times. And I think
Hmm.
parents have to realize that it's okay for that kind of adversity to happen, but how do we support kids through that? Like you're
Hmm.
saying, love, conditional, like I
Well,
don't
that's
know.
where the compassion comes in. Just like Jack needed to know that I loved him to hear feedback, as kind of weird as especially some high level type A athletes and parents will find this is like I have to know that I love myself and I can
Mm,
demonstrate kindness for myself to hear that feedback.
oh boy.
Like
Now
I've
you're
got
going to
to
be working.
know.
Now you're going to be doing therapy with the parents instead of the athlete.
Well, but even like to really hear self-criticism. And I provided myself, I remember in college, I think I was very self-critical. But I think for whatever reason, I just liked myself. I
Yeah.
like I
You're a
never
likable
got into
guy.
that. Yeah, I know, of course. But I just I never got to that point of fully like self-loathing or beating myself up where I was harsh with myself and I gave myself a lot of critical feedback. But I think at the end of the day, I was also like, okay, and I can still like myself and treat myself with kindness as a part of this process,
Yeah.
even though it seems so counterintuitive to use kindness to achieve the results of criticism.
Okay. So you have an athlete who's like self-loathing, and then you have an athlete that is a victim, like, oh, the ref, the coach, the playing time, this or that. Or you have the other side where you're like, you're really beating yourself up. What are you teaching kids? Like, let's say an HB athlete comes to you, we sign them up for a session with John Evans, the HB sports psychologist, and you're finding out that these athletes are kind of like oscillating between, self-loathing or like victimizing themselves. And I hear victims way more. I feel like the victimizing, like, oh, I didn't, and
Really?
at least that's
Mhm.
what I think. You hear a lot of parents who say, "Oh, the coach, the playing time, the refs," and then
Mhm.
that's filtering down to the kid, and then you have the kids, "Oh, I'm not getting the playing time. I'm, like." So I always say, well, let's just start with what you can control. Like
Well,
what.
yeah. I mean, I mean, it was, and you can do it with any sport, but the first time I ever conceptualized this was with a very high level, like Olympic trials swimmer. And the exercise that we did was just, what does it mean to swim in your lane? Right? Because they would like, oh, my coach doesn't put me in the events that I'm the best at. My parents always like, my mom's always getting down on me, and my
Mm-hmm.
training time, I didn't feel well last week. And I'm like, okay, those are what factors belong in your lane of swimming. Where are the things that you control within your lane? And then how do you own, like, here's again, like, this is where the mindfulness and the attention piece comes in, is like, how do I actually create the set of skills and habits where I can only focus on those things that are in my lane? Like, I have to be willing to identify, here are the things I control. Because here's the thing, maybe the coach is a bad coach. Maybe your parent is toxic. Maybe the ref was wrong. Is that helping you? Is there some part of that you're going to be able to influence, especially during and around the performance? No.
Yeah. Right. Right. Maybe you're not as
So
good as the other players either.
maybe you're not. Maybe you're not. Maybe you deserve to be playing on the bench.
Yeah.
Like maybe you are just a role player. But if that's not something that I can control, nor is it something that is helpful for me to perform at a higher level, then I have to learn to filter that out of my attentional space and not use energy toward it. Because we like so much energy goes toward trying to control those uncontrollable things. And energy and attention are a scarce, limited resource. And if we are not using those in efficient ways, we're not going to perform at our best. So with the victim and the self-pity piece, it's like, look, where can you take, I mean, part of that distress tolerance and self-compassion model and process for me is increasing the willingness to take responsibility. Because if I can hear criticism and not automatically deflect it or push it away, because usually the reason for that is I'm already beating myself up and like so badly that the bucket is full. I can't endure anymore. Like my ego is so fragile that I have to externalize it for survival. So that self-compassion and distress tolerance process is all incorporated in that ability to accept responsibility for mistakes and actions and behaviors.
Mm. So is there any practical like exercises you could do to help? Like, let's say I'm beating myself up, or I'm constantly, lost on these things that I can't control, and my energy's always on all these, variables that are really, irrelevant to my future growth. If
Mm-hmm.
it's getting off the bench or it's playing better when I'm in, like worrying about all those other things aren't helping me perform better or get better or train harder. So really, is there any practical things you can do to bring your mind back to that lane that you would recommend?
Lots. I mean, one. So first of all, I'll just Google any mindfulness practice, because what you're practicing in mindfulness is staying present non-judgmentally. No part of what we just talked about that's that. It's like remembering a bad call, predicting what your parents going to yell at you in the car. Like that's all outside the present and outside of non-judgmentalness.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there's like that's like we can, but the one that comes to mind that's really targets this idea of self-compassion, and I think the athlete or it could be a parent, but the athlete has to be a little older to this is a little bit more of an advanced exercise, potentially requires a little bit of journaling, is something I call the inner critical coach versus the inner compassionate coach. And the prompts are this. It's like, okay, you just made a mistake. What are some of the things describe, just like free associate, what are the thoughts that your brain is giving you? What are the emotions? I suck. I can't do this. I'm no good. I might as well not even try. I shouldn't be here. Anger, shame, embarrassment. Okay. Those are all the things that you're experiencing. So here's the thought experiment is now picture that a teammate that you're close to, or if you're a parent, another kid, like a kid or someone that you care a lot about comes to you and they've had the exact same performance experience that you had. Is there any universe in which you are going to say to them the same thing that you just said to yourself? Like, are you basically going to tell them, yeah, you're a loser. You're terrible. You don't belong here. You suck. Just even the idea of me saying that stuff to Jack or Marlene, my wife, Marlena, or a close friend gives me like goosebumps. Like I can't, there's no universe in which I would consider that helpful or functional or like non just sadistic. So that's that part. It's like, okay, if I wouldn't say so, okay, let's just hope that the answer is no. I wouldn't say that. Well, what would I say? So let's transfer to the inner compassionate coach. What would I tell Jack or my wife or a close friend if they came to me and was like, listen, I just played really terrible? I would definitely be honest. There would be accountability, right? I'm not going to be, that's not niceness. It's like, yeah, you didn't play well, but here's something, but look how you've trained, and there's some reassurance in preparation and training, and this is just one moment, and you've got a whole, like, there's another game to be played or another half to be played. Here's some things that maybe you can improve. Like that's what I would say to that person that I care about. Well, then that's the same thing you should be saying to yourself, even if it's hard, even if you have to say it in the third person. Hey, John, listen, yeah, you didn't play great that half. You kind of went in weakly on tackles. You didn't go up strong in 50-50 balls. You didn't make good passing decisions. But you know
Just
what?
turn that to basketball
Oh, my
vernacular.
bad. Right. Sorry.
Didn't box out.
You had it. You had a lot of turnovers. You didn't box out. You missed a couple of free throws. Right. Yeah. But you know what? You can come back in the second half and put a little bit more focus and energy into that. You can dive on, like, get dirty, like get down on the court,
Yeah.
dive for some loose balls. Take an extra second, an extra breath before your next free throw. Like I can say those things. I know enough to give that advice to somebody else. I got to be able to give it to myself. And I have to be able to be really cautious of, if I wouldn't say it to somebody else that I care about, then I shouldn't be saying it to myself.
You think the
So
journaling
that's
piece is I
obviously
think
not during the performance. Like,
yeah,
it
well
has to
no.
be practiced
After.
ahead of time. But
Right.
yeah, I think that the journaling piece of being able to say, here's this myself, you know, how I was vocalizing in my head that criticism. I mean, and then say it out loud as if you're talking to somebody that you really care about. There's no way, no non sociopath is going to be like, yeah, that's exactly what I would say to my kid or my friend or a close teammate or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then you get in the process of being able to do that. And now during a game, at halftime, when I'm warming up, you know, I can engage in that process and be really cognizant of observing some of that critical feedback. And if it's falls into that, no way I would say it to whoever person I care about, and what would I say? And that's what you deserve.
Hmm.
I think that has landed really well, especially with my collegiate, professional, kind of upper level athletes that can kind of conceptualize that. I don't know if a 10, 12-year-old, maybe they can, um, conceptualize, you know, what that might sound like. And I'm sure there's a way to kind of manipulate the language where a younger athlete might be able to engage in that exercise. Um, but it, it's a, it's been really eye opening for a lot of athletes and performers that I work with.
Very eye opening to be aware of your monkey mind, or that voice that tends to be operating without awareness, behind the scenes at all times, thinking about past, thinking about future, thinking about next shot. And I think every athlete, every human, goes, has this, um, this, this mind, this voice happening. And I think the athletes, the sooner they can reflect upon that and be aware of, you know, how do you respond to it, with self-compassion, or like, would I say that to my best friend? Would I say that to somebody that just missed a free throw? Like, you suck, you can't shoot, but yet, that program might be, kind of on an incessant loop in your brain without you even realizing it. I think the mindfulness piece, um, you know, I tried this exercise recently, just every day waking up, and just shutting my eyes and breathing in a comfortable position and getting to 10 slowly, breathing 10 deep
10 slow
breaths,
breaths. Mm-hmm.
10 slow breaths. It is amazing how hard that is, and
Mm-hmm.
how my brain just constantly, I call my voice my little papancha. I don't know why. I call it, I don't know why I named it that. It's a Buddhist word for preponderance of thinking. But I thought, it's funny. It makes me laugh. I was like, oh, there goes my little papancha again, going off the rails, talking about things that don't even matter. I can't control, trying to steal away my present moment, joy and a lot, feeling alive. And it's really strong, I think, for always happening. So that mindfulness practice, it's just amazing to see how hard, I got to start over. I get to 5 and then I'm thinking about, oh man, why am I grinding my coffee beans at, it's not an espresso grind. I got to get that to an espresso grind, because and then I'm like, there's my little, there's my papancha. And then I start again. So I think, this is great advice, not only for parents,
I would
adults,
actually tell
athletes.
you, Trevor, in that practice, don't start over. Like, part of the
Oh,
non-judgmental piece is like,
just,
okay, I screwed up.
I'm at
I you
6.
know, I noticed, yeah. And then, I mean, look, if you want to be like, okay, I'd like to go to 12 or 15, great,
Yeah.
okay. But don't start over, because starting over is like, I screwed up.
Okay. I like that. Yeah.
Just notice that you did. Look, if you lose your page in a book, you're not gonna be like, ah, guess I got to start the book over. No, you're
Yeah.
gonna find your page.
Yeah. Right.
So part of that mindfulness practice is just being able to notice that getting distracted is a normal part of the process of the
Yeah.
human brain.
It's true. Like, I
So
wouldn't
that's the
read,
only.
if I lost my page, if I was reading a book and I was like in the middle of the page and then I realized I was off somewhere else, I wouldn't read the whole book over. You're just saying, like, go
Mhm.
back to where
Just keep going.
go where you where
Go
you
where you
are.
left off.
Start where you left
Yeah.
off. I like that. Well, John, I don't know. I know you got to go soon, so we'll keep this episode with Dr. Evans short. We appreciate you coming on and talking about anxiety and performance and self-loathing, self-compassion, um, and just the honest conversations. I think about parents and unconditional love. I think that to me really is something that rings true because I saw that you just see it happen. Like you're a parent going through that, but you're also a sports psychologist who realizes like, oh my God, my son is out there having a bad day.
I gotta
Like,
tell you, it's so hard sometimes, even for me.
I know I
I
don't have
swear
a
to God,
kid.
like
I
just
yeah, like I felt
it's
that way
so
about
hard.
D2 when D2 would not have like good practices, and I'd just be like, dude, you're going through the motions, like what are you doing? I wanted to like just tear, just like, but yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No, that's all. I mean, it's with all of my knowledge, with all of my everything I know about parenting this age, it's still so hard to just stand there and be because and this is the last thing I'll leave you with is um it it's not a good behavior habit for a kid to do something good on the court or bad and look to the parent for approval and reassurance
Hey, can you say that one
for
more time?
criticism. It is not a good like it we need to break the habit in kids and I've told Jack I was like, "Listen, I am going to talk probably during your soccer game. Ignore me. Do not look at me. You don't worry about me. Don't worry about and I need to change some of my behaviors and obviously there's things I can do, but I've told him like, forget me. Forget about me during a game. Don't even look over here. I'm proud of you. Just know that I love you and I'm proud of you. You do not have to look at me for approval or for some layer of like, did I do it right because my face says something or another. So the kids need to be learn to be like appreciative or critical and get that reassurance and that sense of achievement from themselves, not looking over to the sidelines at their parents. So that is something that we can all, as parents and coaches, even
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
I know. I know a lot of college
help.
coaches. College coaches will look at the parent-child relationship. Like, who is coaching the kid? Is it the parent or the coach? Because if you're coming into my program and I got you looking into the crowd, and we're talking about a hard hedge ball screen defense or a flat hedge or a drop or an ice or a switch, and you're looking over into the crowd going like, I don't, what should I do? Like, no, this
Mm-hmm.
is the program here. Your parent is proud of you and loves you regardless. But right now we're trying to focus on executing this.
The problem is that I'll just speak to my anecdotally to myself, but it's also evidence based. Is like at a young age, you probably were the expert coach for your kid. Like I've been Jack's coach, and so I have to evolve out of that
Yeah.
practice where it's like, no, he has a professional coach now. He has a coach. I've got to be willing and able to step completely out of that role because my role, even as a 7-year old now, he's on a team. I trust the coach. He's just gonna have like that's where he needs to
Right.
be, and we like parents have to be willing to evolve in that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a really good point. Point taken, parents. 1 point for the parents. Can we evolve with our our the athletes that you are raising and kind
And
of
what their
move
needs are.
and what their needs are and kind of move, I think a a smart loving parent figures out that what, it's maybe better to have another voice push my kid and be, have those conversations too about what happens on a bad day. How are we going to grow from this? Where
Mm-hmm.
and then a parent can just focus on the support and the love, and then could like. But I think a lot of that's blurry in the beginning because parents are both roles, coach and parent. Which
Mm-hmm.
is a tough one. It's definitely tough for a parent to evolve into a
So
more.
I definitely have to go right now, but I'm going to leave an addition in
Yeah.
this same vein. But I'm going to leave a challenge to all parents who listen to this podcast is even on the car ride home, don't even talk about the game. Don't talk about basketball. Talk about something else. Let the kid just kind of, if they're uncomfortable, let them kind of sit in their own reflection you want to get home and they ask you, or you want to bring up a point or two, see if you can go the entire car ride home without talking about it, unless they bring it up. But if they don't bring it up, all
If they don't bring it up, you don't bring it up. Is that what you just said?
right.
All right, man. Well, it's a good thing that the technical difficulties happened right at the end.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, Trev.
guys. See you
Okay.
soon. Make sure you guys,
Bye.
if you want to schedule a session with John, you reach out to him. He's on our website sponsors, Blend Health. He is working with some of the HBA athletes already. He's always available to help you guys out in any way possible. So appreciate our sponsors. John, you can sign off. You don't need to listen to this.
All
Thanks for
right.
being
See you,
here.
Trev. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. See
Bye.
ya. So for our show notes, we have John. You can go to Blend website if you want to work with your athletes. We have screen printing with Radco Apparel. If you need a roofing solution, Springfield Roofing. Okay. Commercial or residential, I found out. Accounting, we all need help with accounting. Plant Moran, accounting and taxes, another business sponsor. Photography, Piedmont Photography. If you want if you want to get your athletes, some pictures of live game shots, I think I would go with Piedmont Photography. Some cool HB jerseys. Sprains, strains, or pains, contact Great Lakes Orthopedic Center. Who doesn't need a sprinkler? Everybody needs a sprinkler. Residential, commercial, irrigation installation. Visit Northern Sprinkler Systems for more information. Chiropractic care, Shift Health Center, neck pain, back pain. They were voted simply the best in TC. Go get your stuff figured out. I won't do that ever again. Jewelry, Miners North. Oh my gosh, the Gunsfillers. Thank you guys for all your help and all your support. You guys are amazing. And then the distribution of the thirsty drinks and things we like for Northern Michigan, Cox and Sons distribution, alcohol, they got it all. So make sure you guys check out our sponsorship page. And if you want to be a sponsor, make sure you guys reach out to me, THUFFMAN24 at Gmail. We have, another season coming up, spring season. And we are, we're just looking to rent more gym time for training days, for practice times. As we open up our tryouts, it's important that parents know this is really about development and training, and we want to be able to plug you guys in, whether you're on a tier 1 team or a tier 2 team, kind of our travel teams that are going downstate. If you make those teams, or if you don't make the spring season team, you're always welcome. Okay, just reach out to me. We want to keep your kids in the gym. We want to keep them practicing, even if they don't make the team, but they were on the team for fall or winter. The goal is that you guys have access to our camps, our app, our skill training, and really just continue to develop, regardless if you're on a team or if you're on more of a local team, as we merge, with Riptide and Northern Pride. The goal of this is to keep the continuity and create a longer season for the kids to develop. So appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Go HB Elite.